Thanks, Jimena. So like Jimena said, welcome everybody. I am super excited to paint with you all tonight. Tonight we will be painting Layered Garden, which is this beautiful floral piece. So like always, we are so privileged and feel so lucky to have you all painting with us tonight. And we will be painting this painting in just about an hour. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about some specialty folk art paint that we're going to be using tonight. So of course, like always on our Michael's paint nights, we're going to be using our promo FAI kit, which of course you can find at michaels.com. And we decided it would be really fun to add in some brand new folk art specialty colors into our painting tonight. So if you've ever heard of Color Shift before, it is a really specialty paint in the folk art line. Like it says, the colors shift in the changing light. So we've had Color Shift for a few years now. And actually just this year, we introduced some really beautiful new colors to the Color Shift line. And those are our Color Shift pastels. So tonight we are going to be adding a little bit of beautiful shifting color into our finished painting with Color Shift pastel pink, pastel blue, and pastel yellow. If you didn't have time to pick this up tonight or before our class tonight, then don't worry about it. You can always add a touch of Color Shift later. Also, you feel free to use all three colors that we called out tonight, but also it'd be really beautiful if you just wanted to add one touch of one of these colors, whether you like the yellow or the blue or the pink. So it's totally up to you. You will have a lot of fun painting along with us tonight if you just have our promo FAI kit. And of course, I'm going to go over all of the colors that we're going to be using. But I just wanted to say that really quick. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started, you guys. I'm going to go ahead by calling out all of the different paints that you're going to want to have to follow along with us tonight. So we are going to be using all folk art matte colors, like always, and we're going to be using Violet Pansy, Lime Green, Classic Green, Lipstick Red, Daffodil Yellow, True Blue, Bright Pink, and lastly, Wicker White. And we also called out, tonight we're going to be using one of these Craftsmart white paint markers. You really can use any size tip that you want, depending on how big you want your lines to be. When we add a little bit of detail to our finished painting, I'm using this wide one, as you can see, but you can use whatever size that you want to use or that you can find or that you have on hand. It's totally up to you. I feel like there's something else that I wanted to mention. Oh, one more thing. So like Amanda said at the beginning of our recording, don't forget that this class is being recorded. So if you're finding that we're going a little bit too fast for your personal pace, then don't worry. In about 24 to 48 hours, you will be able to view this recording on michaels.com and on their YouTube page so that you can follow along, pause and stop and rewind at your own pace so that you can catch everything we do tonight. So don't forget that, because we might be going a little quickly just so I can show you guys all of the tips and tricks that I want to show you guys before our class is over. So let's get started, you guys. I'm going to bring our finished painting in so that we can reference it if we need to. Okay, so first off, you guys, we are going to add to our palette some folk art wicker white. And we might be running a little bit low on our wicker white tonight. This wicker white has been well loved, you guys. So we're adding some wicker white, and right next to that, we are going to go ahead and add some classic green. And to top it all off, we are going to add some true blue to our palette. Okay, so right here, I have this 1.5 inch flat brush. But we called out to use the Craftsmart variety pack tonight. So I'm pretty sure the biggest brush in that pack is a 1 inch flat. So that will work just fine. This is going to be to base coat our canvas, but just to move things along a little bit more quickly, I'm going to use this 1.5 inch flat brush. But if you have a 1 inch, that is totally fine. So I'm going to take the corner of my flat brush, and actually let me go ahead and make sure you guys can see this really, really well so that we don't miss anything. I'm going to move this to the side here. and then move my palette a little bit more so that you guys can see everything I'm doing. Perfect. Okay, so I'm going to take the corner of my flat brush and dip it into my classic green. And then on the other corner of my flat brush, I'm going to dip it into my true blue so that I have that green and that blue on both sides of my brush. Okay, so now I'm going to add that into my wicker white and just mix that up nice and good. I should also mention too that Stephen White is going to be moderating our chat tonight. So like always, if you have any questions or you want me to repeat a color name or you want me to dive a little bit deeper into maybe a certain technique that we're working on, then feel free to enter that into the chat and Stephen will be watching all of those questions and answering them or relaying them over to me. So as you guys can see, I did that pretty quickly, but I just added that full dime size amount of our classic green into our wicker white. So I have quite a bit of paint loaded onto my brush, and that's perfect. We're going to brush that on. So we're ending up with this really beautiful natural green color. And as we're doing this, if you don't mind too, Stephen, when you get a chance, if you would mind bringing me a little bit more wicker white.
Yeah, for sure.
I told you guys that wicker white was well loved. I should have checked how much was in the bottle before we got started.
So Emma, for the late comers, can you go ahead and repeat what you've done so far? You've just mixed your three colors, right?
Of course. So we added about a ratio of 2 parts white to 1 part classic green. Let's say that again. 4 parts white to 2 parts classic green to 1 part true blue. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more white. I miscalculated, you guys. And as you can see, you'll see on my canvas, you can see that those little streaks of that true blue there. And normally I would want to cover that up and make sure that the paint is really well blended together. Because of course that's what you want ideally when you're blending colors together. But for this painting, it actually doesn't matter so much because we are going to, as the name of the painting speaks, we are going to do a lot of layering tonight. So a lot of this base green color is actually going to end up being covered up. So I'm not really working too hard to blend together. Thank you, Stephen. Okay, so all we're looking for right here is to get that first base layer of our light, beautiful green color on our square canvas. And I don't think we mentioned this, but in the supply list, we called for a 10 by 10 canvas. Tonight, I'm actually using a 12 by 12 canvas so that you guys can really get the full scope of what I'm painting. So you guys can see it really, really well. But you can use whatever size canvas you want. You can use a square canvas like we're doing tonight, or you can use a rectangle canvas, really whatever you want to use, because this painting is so loose and so painterly, then you really don't have to worry about the size of your canvas. So once you've gone ahead and base coated your light green color onto your canvas, I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush.
And Emma, your brush was dry when you started, right?
That is correct. So that's
Gotcha.
a good question. My brush was dry, but honestly, you really don't have to worry about that too much for this, because if you were using a damp brush, that would have worked just fine too. We were only base coating. There wasn't a lot of technique involved. So a dry brush, a damp brush, whatever you were using, that's totally fine. Okay, so now that we did that, I'm going to go ahead and add some lime green onto our palette.
And since you're doing that, that's a lighter color green. Do you think it would be okay if somebody mixed their original 3 colors and the green came out a little bit lighter?
Oh, absolutely. Like we said, so I do want to point that out. That is a great question, whoever asked that. Because this canvas is so abstract and so loose and so painterly, we're going to go into a little bit of color theory tonight, but you really don't need to stress about what color you end up with tonight. If your color looks a little bit different than mine, that is totally fine. I just want you to be happy with your finished canvas. It is so loose and so fun and abstract that whatever color you end up with will be totally fine. And another good point to call out is that, flowers are so natural and loose organically in nature. So whatever, flowers are tons of different colors. You can't grow the same flower twice to be the same exact color. So that's kind of the gist of what we're trying to do in our painting tonight. So we have that base color of our light green down. We just added some lime green and some classic green. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a smaller flat brush. I'm going to use a 1/2 inch flat, but whatever small brush you have will work just fine. I'm going to dip it in my lime green. And I'm going to make some broad, loose brush strokes in varying areas of my canvas. So our light green color is not dry. It's still a little damp. It's still a little tacky, and that's fine because we're actually kind of blending this lime green color into that light green color. So it's okay if they blend together a little bit. And one thing I want to keep in mind too, as I'm doing this, when I make these really loose abstract paintings like this, and it kind of ends up looking more like a pattern instead of a specific, what's the word I'm looking for?
Instead of being like less random.
Right. We're making a pattern tonight. So one thing I like to keep in mind is whenever I'm making brush strokes or shapes, or in this case tonight, flowers, I want some of my pattern to look like it's continuing off of my canvas. I mean, you guys can see we have this purple flower that's kind of looks like, if our canvas was a little bit longer, then you would get the full view of the flower. So it kind of cuts off a little bit. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So when I'm adding these lime green brush strokes, I'm painting a little bit off the canvas because I want it to look like that if this canvas was bigger, then the pattern would continue off of our canvas. So once you add your lime green, now we're going to go ahead and rinse our brush, our 1/2 inch flat. Make sure it's nice and rinsed. Now we're going to dry it with a paper towel. Make sure it's nice and dry. Okay, so we just did very loose brush strokes of our lime green onto our canvas. And really this is just adding some interest and some texture into our background. We're going to do the same exact thing with our classic green. So for this classic green, we're introducing it to new areas, and we're also overlapping our lime green in a couple of areas. Making sure to add some brush strokes that are leading off of the canvas, just like that. So I hope that this painting is really relaxing for everyone tonight. That was my intention in creating it. I want you guys to be really creative and just really have fun and relax with this one tonight. It's not super technical. So hopefully you guys will have a lot of fun painting this. Okay, so once you're pleased with the amount of green in the background, and remember, we're going to be painting over this. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush. Okay, so once our brush is clean and dry, I'm going to go ahead and use my hair dryer to lock my painting in place so that it's nice and dry for our next steps. Okay, so whenever I want my canvas to be really dry before my next step, I just lay a hand on it and see if there's any tacky spots. It doesn't feel like there are, so we're good to move on to our next
Hey,
step.
Emma, what would you say if somebody didn't have a hair dryer?
Okay, if you don't have a hair dryer, then that's a great reason that this class is being recorded. So I would, ideally even above using my hair dryer, I really would want this to just air dry so that our paint has a little bit of time to cure before we can go ahead and move on to our next step. There's going to be a few points in our painting tonight where I want our canvases to be nice and dry before we move on to our next step. That way we can avoid blending the colors that we're about to paint with the colors under it. So ideally, I would want this to air dry and really opposed to using my blow dryer. So that's a great reason why our class is being recorded tonight, so that you can go ahead and wait for it to dry a little bit and then press play again when you're ready to move on to the next step. Also, if you don't have a hair dryer, you can always set this in front of an oscillating fan or something like that. Really anything that you think would help dry your painted canvas. Okay, so moving on, we're going to add some more wicker white to our palette. And I'm going to keep using my 1/2 inch flat. I'm going to take just a smidge of my true blue, about that much, and I'm going to add it to my quarter sized amount of wicker white. So you have to remember, whenever we are using a really rich color like true blue or classic green or lipstick red, a little bit will go a long way into our wicker white. So you can always add more blue, but you don't want to be wasting paint and have to add a ton more white. So whenever I'm looking for an exact color, once I'm adding it to white, I like to start off with a little bit of that more dominant color and then keep adding until I get my desired tone. So that's looking really nice. So really, ideally, you want to end up with this really pretty, soft robin's egg blue color. Show you guys. Something like that. Soft baby blue. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to start painting the base for these clusters of blue flowers. So I'm going to try to make it a little bit similar to the composition of this one. So we are going to create some large ovals. Just like that. So we're just making some big swooping motions with our 1/2 inch flat to create those oval shapes. Okay, so whenever I like to make big shapes like that, I like to start with my outline. And then once I'm pleased with my outline, which I am in this case, then I'll go into the middle and I'll fill in. And we want this big, soft blue oval to be opaque. And the nice thing about our FolkArt matte colors is that you rarely have to worry about the opacity. The colors are so rich and creamy and opaque that usually you do one coat and you're done. So there's our first oval. Now we're going to add some smaller ovals into these corners of our painting. So as you can see in our finished painting, we have this blue here. So that's going to be the smallest oval. Just make that a lot smaller than our initial oval. And then here we have a medium-sized blue oval. Just like that. Okay, now once you have those base shapes and you're pleased with the size, same kind of deal as adding in those bolder colors to your white. You can always add more, but you can't take it away. So if you want to start out with a smaller shape, and then if you're not pleased with the size, you can go a little bit bigger. So as you can see, that's kind of what I did. I started with a smaller size. I wanted it to be a little bit bigger. So I just made one more swooping motion to kind of round that out and make my oval a little bit bigger. So I'm pleased with that size. So let's go ahead and fill that in. Same with our top one. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So I don't want us to do too much blow drying tonight. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to start focusing on the base shapes of our painting tonight. And then once those are dry, just by air drying, then we can go in and add some of those more fine details. So I'm going to rinse this off. Make sure it's nice and clean and nice and dry. Still working with that 1/2 inch flat brush. Now what we're going to do, oh my goodness, we are going to introduce some of our daffodil yellow to our palette. So now we are going to create some of these yellow shapes that you see. So in this painting, some of our base shapes are going to end up creating different types of flowers. So here we have these more circular bulbs in our top area here, but then you can see in the corner here, we have some looser, kind of more loose polka dotty flowers going on here. But for both, or really all three of these types of flowers, we're going to make the same base shape because they're all yellow. So a little bit similar to how we just did our light blue shapes, but instead of making an oval, we're actually going to make kind of a scalloped shape. So we're going to make a little C stroke like that, and I'll hold it up a little bit so you guys can see. So we're kind of making a C stroke, adding on to it as we come down, continuing with those C strokes. And as we do that, we are going to end up creating a scallop shape. And as you guys can see, I'm butting up right against that light blue oval. So really the key to this painting is if you take away anything, we want our painting to look full and bountiful, like the flowers are just overflowing. So we want our flowers to be really close to each other, and we barely even want to see any of that green base layer that we added down. So like that. And if your yellow is not as opaque as you would want it to be, that's okay, because remember, we're going to continue to layer, layer, layer on this painting. And yellow is always kind of a tricky one to make as opaque as you want it to be, just because the nature of the yellow pigment. So continuing with those C strokes, coming in the bottom part. And if you guys want to as well, you can play with the size of your C strokes. So as you can see, I made a smaller C, and then I kind of did that big, tall C. Smaller C, and let's make another big, long C. Just like that. And once we create our scalloped border, go ahead and fill in with your daffodil yellow. Okay, then one more down here. Just kind of peeking out. And go ahead and fill in. Beautiful. Okay, so again, you guys got the hang of it. We're going to go ahead and rinse our brush. Make sure it's nice and clean. We're still using that 1/2 inch flat, and dry it off with your paper towel. So again, we are going to add some Wicker white onto our palette. And now we are going to add a new color. We're going to introduce some bright pink, which is probably one of my favorite colors from our FAI kit. Okay, so like we have done before, we're going to add a tiny bit of our bright pink because we can always add more bright pink. We don't want to end up wasting paint. So if we add too much bright pink, then we'll have to add more white and we'll run the risk of wasting our paint. So add a little bit of bright pink. So I want mine to be a little bit darker. So go ahead and scoop up a little bit more of that bright pink and add it to your Wicker white. And we are looking for a kind of bubblegum pink color, a light bubblegum pink. Maybe we'll even add just a touch more of that bright pink. Perfect. This is going to work beautifully. Okay, so I'm pleased with that shade of pink. We got that really pretty bubblegum pink. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to add some circles into our painting, and that's going to end up representing this kind of rose-ish, tulipy shape that we have going on there. So we're going to add one circle here, getting really, really close to our yellow and our light blue. And let's do another circle up top here, or I guess maybe right here. So again, I'm making a C stroke this way to create our circle. And then starting clockwise, we're gonna do a mirroring C shape that way. And that way we end up with a circle. And please, please, please don't worry about your circle being 100% perfect. Like we talked about, flowers are not perfect in nature. We don't want them to be perfect. So if yours is not perfect, that's even better. Okay, so you guys are pretty good at the scallop shape now. Now we're going to move on to these two shapes. So getting pretty close to our blue, but still leaving a little bit of room. We're going to make some more scallop shapes. But this one, this shape in particular, I want you guys to think about it kind of like a wide triangle. Or like a cloud, a fluffy cloud. And then go ahead and fill that in. Okay, another one down in our corner, right about in this area. This one, I want it to be a little bit more circular, but if you really love that triangle shape, then feel free to do that one again. That's the fun part about this painting, that everyone's is going to look so, so different and unique. It's going to be awesome. And while we're talking about everyone's paintings looking so unique and different, we have a really awesome Facebook group called Let's Paint with Plaid. And it is a wide community of artists from all different skill levels. We have beginner painters, intermediate painters, some really advanced painters. And it's a really great community where everyone posts. I'm going to interrupt myself and rinse my brush. It's a really great community where everyone posts their works of art. We have a lot of great free educational resources for you guys to use, some painting classes on there. But one of my favorite things about that Facebook group is that a lot of you guys post your finished paintings from our Michael's Paint Nights on there. And every night, I can't wait to go home and see all of your finished paintings and comment on all of them and see how different and how beautiful everyone's paintings turns out. That is really like the highlight of my month. So if you want me and you want Stephen and all of our other resident artists here at Plaid to see your works of art and just really be a part of an amazing community, then make sure to go to Let's Paint with Plaid, that group on Facebook, and Stephen can go ahead and put that in the chat.
Yeah, for sure. And while I'm doing that, Emma, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Is it okay if the blue and pink are touching each other?
Absolutely. That is more than perfect. There are really no rules to this painting. As you can see, we got some weird, funky shapes going on right now. So yes, absolutely. If your shapes are touching, that's even better. Okay, I'm going to add some more Wicker white. And introducing another new color, we are going to introduce some violet pansy, a really beautiful, rich purple color. A little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to retire my 1/2-inch flat brush and go for a smaller flat brush. Okay, so now I'm going to take a little bit of this violet pansy, introduce it into a wicker white. Wicker white. It's a hard one to say. That was a good first try, you guys. I'm pleased with that tone. It's a nice, soft purple. Okay, so this one, these shapes are going to be pretty abstract. So kind of continuing with that scallop shape that we've been practicing tonight, except think of the scallops being a little bit pointier, if that makes sense. So really what I mean is that those C strokes are going to be a lot more tall and skinny and pointier. So instead of them being voluptuous and round, these are going to be a little bit more dramatic. So kind of like that. So continue with that scallop shape that we have been working on, but they're going to be a little bit sharper. So we have one light purple over here. Fill that in. So now we're going to make some smaller sizes of what we just were working on. So we're going to make a smaller one right here. Let's have him overlap our blue.
Emma, did you say what size brush you're using? I may have missed it if you did.
I did not say. Really, for this one, you can use any small flat brush that you want to use. Okay, so for this purple shape that we have going on here, I'm trying to think of how I want to describe that. So I'll show you how I'll start it here. So we're going to make one big C stroke at the bottom here. One big overarching C stroke right there, like that. One big swooping motion. So kind of think of it like we're still continuing with those scallop shapes that we did, but the bottom of it is going to be one big swooping C stroke. And then coming off the top, we're going to fill in with some smaller scallop shapes. So that big guy there. And then coming up, we have these smaller scallop shapes. And fill that in. Okay, so now you guys can see too, we have these little smaller, almost like daisy or chrysanthemum, very petally flowers with that light purple. So we're going to go ahead and do that too. So we're still continuing. Oh, we forgot one over here. Do that real quick. Okay, so going back to those daisy shapes, those small little guys that are appearing all over our canvas. So these are really going to be our quote unquote filler shapes. So wherever you see larger areas of green, we're going to try to fill some of that green area in with these little tiny daisies. So I'm actually going to go ahead and rinse my 1/2 inch flat and opt for a number 6 flat, which is just a lot smaller of a flat brush. And I'm going to continue using that soft lavender color, and we're going to continue with those C strokes. But because we're using a smaller brush now, we're going to end up with some smaller scallops. So doing that, scallop, scallop, scallop. And really all I'm doing is I'm looking for the bigger areas of green that I want to be a little bit more covered up. Because the theme of tonight is abundance and bounty. So we want this to look like our garden is overflowing. So we want our shapes to be really, really close together. And you don't need to worry about, see, if I were painting this tonight, then I would be like, I don't really love how a lot of those purple colors are close to each other. There's a lot of purple that's near each other. I would like to break it up with a light pink or a light blue. Don't worry, because as you can see in our final painting, we're going to go over and layer some of those with some different colors. So some of those light purple colors will have some bright pink on top. Some will have some violet pansy on top. So in the end, they're going to end up looking really different. Okay, where else? Where else? Let's do a little tiny one here. One more in our corner. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, so I'm happy with this right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and rinse my brush.
Emma, are we worrying about the sides of our canvases at the moment?
That's a great question. I personally am not. You can always go ahead and at the end of our painting, fill in the sides of your canvas with that pretty light green color that we mixed in the beginning. I probably will end up doing that. But I just wanted to focus on the main points of our painting tonight, but you can totally go ahead and paint the sides of your canvas right now if you want to. Okay, you guys, so what we're going to do next is we're going to do a little bit more mixing. So we're going to take some of that light green color that we mixed in the beginning. And remember, that was Wicker white, some classic green, and a touch of true blue, that pretty green color. And we're going to introduce a couple more drops of our true blue into that color, make it a little bit more blue, so that we end up with this really pretty kind of gem-like bluish green color. Okay, you guys, so what we're going to do next is we are going to focus on these big soft blue ovals that we painted right in the beginning. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint smaller flowers. So you see my quotes on top because they're going to be really, really loose. So what we're going to do, I'll hold this up a little bit more so that you guys can see. I'm going to start at our bottom one. I'm going to paint, starting at the outside, paint in, so that we're kind of making like a starburst. So I'm starting at the outside, in, going out to, if it's more comfortable for you, whatever's comfy. And we're going to continue that. Sometimes we're going to start over that blue and we're making those starburst shapes, trying to differentiate them from each other so that they don't all blend together into the same shape. We do want to see some of that light blue color peeking, but we're going to create bundles of these inside our light blue.
Can you repeat how you made that color, Emma?
Yeah, so I added quite a bit of wicker white. And in the beginning, you'll remember we added quite a bit of classic green and just a touch of true blue. But in this case, we're adding quite a bit of true blue and just a touch of classic green. And we end up with this pretty sagey color.
And what size brush?
This is a number 6 flat. So this is just a really small flat brush. But if you would feel more comfortable making this type of shape with a round brush or a liner brush, then of course, like always, feel free to use something like that instead, whatever you feel comfortable with. Okay, so unlike some of our other base colors, this is going to be the same type of deal for all of our light blue. So go ahead and move on to your other light blue ovals and make those shapes. Really loose, have fun with it. But I'm just being mindful too that I don't want my starburst shapes to be too close to each other because I still want to see some of that pale blue peeking through the background. But as you can see, I'm still kind of trying to make them uniform in size. Okay, so you guys, once you've done that, we can go ahead and rinse our brush. Make sure it's nice and clean. Perfect. Now we're going to add a little bit more Wicker white to our palette. And for this next color, we're going to take some of our daffodil yellow and mix it into our white until we end up with a nice light yellow color. And just like we were talking about earlier, you can always add more yellow to your white, but it would kind of be a pain to have to add more white to your yellow. So just keep that in mind. So what we're going to do now is on top of these scallops, kind of using the scallops as a guide, we are going to paint some circles into that yellow scallop shape. So we're going to make a swooping motion that way and then mirroring it on the other side, making circles. And I don't really like it when these circles touch each other. If you prefer that they do, then by all means, you feel free to do that. But if I need to make some circles smaller than others to avoid touching each other, then personally, that's what I like. So that's what I'm going to do. But like I said, if you don't mind that, then go ahead and have them touch each other. And I'm going to keep going with that on all of my yellow shapes. And like always, we don't want our circles to be perfect. We want them to look natural and organic. So kind of like that. Okay, so while we have this light yellow on our brush, if you still have some open spaces of green that you would like to fill in, then go ahead and do that by just adding some cute little brush strokes, just adding pops of color in areas where you would like some yellow to live. Like the petals, like we're caught in a windstorm and some of the petals released from their flowers and they're flying away. Just loose wherever you want, little pops of yellow on your painting. Okay, I'm gonna rinse my brush. Now we're gonna move on to our pink flowers. So we're gonna add to our palette. If you need more bright pink, then go ahead and add some more bright pink. And we're also gonna introduce some lipstick red. Okay, so continuing with our number 6 flat, I'm gonna take some of my bright pink and I'm gonna make some C strokes, kind of following some of those pink shapes. So if we want it to kind of overlap some of that light pink, if we want it to fall within our light pink shape, or if we want it to fall outside, then that's up to you. This is really going to be a painting all about making artistic choices. Whatever you prefer, you can test some things out. And if you don't like it, then that's the great thing about painting, is that you can always paint over it. You can always try something new, whatever you want to do. So a few more of those C strokes to really fill in some of that color. We're just wanting it to look really loose, really organic. So now we did those little bunchy guys. Now we're going to move on to our circles. So for this, it's going to be a little bit different. Instead of the points of the C coming closer together, we're going to want the points of our C strokes to be a little bit farther apart, really lining our circle shape. Does that make sense? So like this. So these are really tight and the ends were touching, but this, we're just kind of making an outline for our
Emma,
circle.
can you repeat how you got that color?
Yes, so this right now, we are just using FolkArt Bright Pink from our FAI kit.
Got you.
Something like that, okay? And while we have our bright pink on our palette, we're going to go in with some of those lavender flowers that we made in the beginning, or not really the beginning, but we made earlier, and we're going to kind of do a similar starburst pattern. If you'll remember that we made in our blue ovals, we're making that same starburst pattern, just with some brush strokes coming inward on our lavender flowers that we painted the base of earlier. Leaving, of course, some of that beautiful lavender color showing. So we're avoiding these bigger lavender shapes. Right now, we are only painting the smaller lavender shapes. One more. Beautiful. Okay, so we are about done. We are done, I believe, with our bright pink. So I'm going to go ahead. Actually, you know what? Let's actually not rinse our bright pink quite yet. We're going to take some of our daffodil yellow, bring it down here, introduce some of that bright pink to our daffodil yellow. And when we mix these two colors together, we're going to get a really beautiful coral color. And you could, if you wanted to mix, instead of the bright pink, you could mix some of your lipstick red with your daffodil yellow, and you would end up with more of a pure orange color. But I really love the way that the bright pink turns this into a really peachy, corally color. It's like a very mango color. Okay, so now that we have this kind of mango color on our brush, we're going to paint the insides of these little bulb flowers. So just kind of swooping around with that number 6 flat. We don't want our circles to be perfect, but we're going to make little circles in the centers of those light yellow bulbs. Doing that for all of these. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and rinse my brush. Okay, it's coming together, you guys. What do you think? Now I'm going to go ahead and dry my brush. And we have some of our violet pansy on our palette. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually introduce a little bit more bright pink to my palette. And I'm going to take, let's say, 3/4 violet pansy to 1/4 bright pink. We're going to mix that together so that we get a kind of pinky purple. Okay, so with our 3/4 violet pansy to our 1/4 bright pink, we're going to go ahead and with these bigger lavender shapes that we have left over, I'm going to paint a very similar technique to how we painted the outside. We're going to use those same city strokes, but we're leaving a little bit of that lavender border. We're making those seed strokes. We're following the initial base line that we did with the lighter purple, but we're just filling in the centers. And we're going to continue to do that for all of these light lavender shapes. And if you want to have a really thick light purple border, then you can. If you really want to have a very thin light purple border, then you can as well. It's totally up to you. One more, we're going to save our top guy. We're going to do something a little bit different with him. Just following that base shape that we did. Okay, rinse my brush. Okay, so now we are getting to the finish line, you guys. You're all troopers. I cannot wait to see your paintings. And if you don't want to join the Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group, I would still love to see your paintings. So if you decide to post your paintings on social media, make sure to hashtag Make It With Michaels and Plaid Crafts. We're always looking under those hashtags and we love seeing what you guys are creating. I rinsed my brush a little bit too soon now that I'm looking at it, but that's okay. So I just added some more true blue to my palette and continuing with my number 6 flat, but you can use whatever small flat brush you have. That's how big it is compared to my hand. Whatever small flat brush you have, I'm going to pick up some of that true blue and inside these kind of jade starbursts that we painted a little while ago, we're going to paint some looser, smaller starbursts in the center of all of those, just really quick and loose and tiny. And they're not even gonna, these aren't, I'm stumbling over my words tonight, you guys. I need another coffee, probably too late for coffee. These are not going to be as perfect starburst shapes as the color underneath. They're just going to be a little bit more random, a little bit more abstract, almost kind of like we're bouncing down on our painting. Just very loose, little, see that? Just super loose and random. inside of all of those. And I love when we add that true blue, the contrast to some of the more muted colors that we have on our palette. I love the way the true blue looks on top of that jadish green color. Okay, that is the true blue. So now we can go ahead and rinse our brush. And like I was saying before, we rinsed our purple off a little too preemptively. So we're going to go back for that pinkish purple color that we mixed right here. A reminder that is mostly violet pansy with a little bit of bright pink. And we're going to make some very loose brush strokes on this top corner flower. I'm just drawing down, painting down, really loose and fun. Going outside of that shape that we painted. One more there, perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and pick up some of our lipstick red. And we are going to make some, we were just really just giving it time for our bright pink to dry on our pink flowers. But now that that's dry, we're going to go ahead and paint the same kind of C-strokey shapes that we did initially. But that's going to be lipstick red now on our pink flowers. Really loose. They don't even need to fall in line with each other if you want to make some new strokes like that. Just really brush strokey, abstract, like that. So really it's going to be at this point where we're going to see our paintings come to life. So turn your artistic brain on, your creative brain on if it wasn't on already. If you want to at points, if you want to rewatch this after you paint along tonight and kind of pause and sit back and really see, what does my painting need right now? Where do I want to add more brush strokes? Where do I want to add more of that color? That is the fun part about this painting. A lot of the strokes that we're doing tonight are the same. So really, it is totally up to you guys to decide what more you want to add to your painting. That is looking nice, you guys. No more red tonight, so rinse your brush. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go in with some of our bright pink. We were waiting for these little bulbs to be done. So take some of that bright pink and we're just going to add tiny little strokes in the center of that peachy mango coral color. We're just adding the center of those flowers with our bright pink. Little tiny strokes. If you want to touch down and kind of pounce, pounce, pounce to make really tiny shapes, or if you want to brush, if you want to pull your brush to make those little shapes. Rinse your brush again. Okay. It's going to be some of the last bit of painting that we do tonight. So take some of that violet pansy and we're going to make some very broad, loose circles in the centers of our purple flowers. And even if you wanted to add a little bit of our light pink, add that to really distinguish it. I really do love how it kind of, that light pink color blends in with our violet pansy. Now pick up that light pink again, maybe add a few more brush strokes into this corner. It's looking beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Rinse your brush. Okay, you guys, a couple more steps and then we are done. So this is the star of the show tonight. Ta-da! We're gonna add some of our color shift onto our palette. So like we talked about in the beginning, I'm just gonna go ahead and add all three real quick while I'm speaking. Like we talked about in the beginning, color shift has been around for a while. Of course, it's available at Michael's. But recently this year, we are really excited because we introduced some pastel color shift colors, yay, to our color shift line. So that's what we're gonna be using tonight. But before we do, to make sure that the colors are really vibrant, I'm gonna go ahead and blow dry this super, super quick. Okay, so let's start with one of my favorites, our pastel pink. I'm gonna add that to my number 6 flat. And I'm gonna really, again, turn on that artistic brain and decide where I want some really beautiful shifting color to be in my painting. So I think I'm gonna add it to the center of my pink flowers here. So just kind of doing a starburst again. I'm going to add some more of that into the center of really all of my pink flowers. That beautiful, beautiful color shift. And last but not least, I'm going to actually do an overcoat onto the light pink that we added into this top formation. I'm going to go ahead and on top of that light pink, I'm going to fill in with that pastel pink color shift. So really that light pink was kind of acting as a base coat for our color shift. Where else? Where else? I think that's it. I'm happy with that. So rinse my brush. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some of our pastel blue color shift. And I'm going to add that kind of in sporadically into some of my blue flowers. Adding just pops of that color shift over that beautiful light blue color that we mixed in the very beginning. Very loose, soft, tiny little brush strokes. Wherever I want that pop of shifting color to live on my painting. I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of my blue flowers, adding that pop of color shift with my number 6 flat. Lastly, this guy. Looking good. Okay. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna rinse my brush and then finally let's add some of that pastel yellow color shift. And you guys probably guessed it by now. I'm gonna go ahead and use that those little brush strokes of yellow we did to add pops of color. I'm gonna go ahead and do an overcoat with our pastel yellow color shift. Make sure we get every last one. Okay, and now same thing, I'm gonna add it sporadically into some of my beautiful yellow flowers as well. Okay, you guys, so while I'm doing this, get your white paint pen ready. This is the final step of the evening. I have this Craftsmart white paint pen. Test it out real quick, looking good. Okay, but if you don't have a paint pen, then you can use a really thin white liner brush, and I would actually dampen that liner brush so that you have a lot of fluidity in your movement and your paint brush glides really easily onto your painting. So you can use a liner brush with Wicker white, watered down a little bit, or you can use this paint pen. And this is a really fun part. We're just going to go around our painting and add some doodles. And I will say that our white paint pen is going to appear initially at first a little bit more opaque over some of our darker colors. So if you're not happy with the opacity of your paint pen right away, then you can wait for it to dry a little bit. And then all you have to do is just go over it again. Really simple and easy.
So Emma, we had a question asking if you could explain a little bit deeper about the paint pen step. You're just sort of like outlining some of these flowers that don't really have a ton of detail on them, right?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I'm sorry for not explaining that well enough. All I'm doing is I'm just having fun. I'm kind of doodling over our painting tonight. I'm just adding some more detail with some outlines. So as you guys can see in our finished painting, like, you know, we created some really, really loose colors. Really loose shapes. Oh, look at that color shift, you guys. That looks cool. So that's what your color shift's going to look like in the end. But we created some really, really loose shapes initially. So all I'm doing with my white paint pen is really trying to define some of those floral shapes so that it really looks like a layered garden. I don't know about you guys, if you were doodlers in school. I certainly was. I know Stephen was. Stephen is still a doodler. So when I was
That's very true. You didn't have to call me out like that, but you did.
Stephen is a true doodler. I don't know about you guys, but this was probably my most favorite part of creating this painting.
So Emma, if you didn't have a paint pen, is there a way that you could suggest like emulating or simulating rather the same effect?
Absolutely. So you can use some of your Wicker white, which you probably already have if you painted most of this painting. You can use Wicker white and taking a liner brush. If you want to dampen your liner brush or even add a tiny bit of water to your Wicker white, just so that your paint glides really, really smoothly onto your canvas, then you can make those same thin white strokes with that I'm making right now with my paint pen. You can do that with a liner brush. I sometimes just prefer using the paint pen because I feel like I can make some more precise lines with it, but you could totally do the same exact thing and end up with the same exact result just with your Wicker white and a diluted Wicker white and a liner brush. Okay, you guys, that is it. That was a fun one. I don't know about you guys, but I had a lot of fun. Okay, so everybody, show us your paintings. Beautiful. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you had a really fun time. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you got to relax a little bit and turn your artist brain on. I know I did. It's always a pleasure painting with you all. Don't forget to join our Let's Paint Live Facebook group, or I'm sorry, our Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. I always love seeing your paintings. It's the highlight of my month. Thank you guys again for tuning in. And we will see you next time. Bye guys.
Bye everybody.